Today I'm bringing you a little video about something I'm calling my postcard keeper. I got the idea from a library book, and I'll put the details below. It's a book called Artful Journals. Here I am just measuring up my postcards, which I have for many years wanted to find a way of just grouping them together and keeping them neat and tidy, but still being able to see them. And all the ways I'd tried in the past simply didn't work. But I saw this neat idea simply using a ledger post and decided to have a go at it. I've put my postcards that I want to group into a bundle, and I've taken the largest ones of those, and I'm just checking because it's the size of the largest piece that will determine the size of the cover, basically. Once I've done that, I need to put a hole punch in all of the postcards, and depending on whether they're landscape or portrait orientation, I need to group them so that the top left hand corner of the portrait and the bottom left hand corner of the landscape postcards are all aligned. Now I'm using just a spare, it's actually a postcard from our local library. I need to punch out to use as a template, and I wasn't sure what size would be best for that little ledger post that I had, so I'm using my ordinary hole punch, which to me was a little loose. It fitted in very easily but was a little loose, so I decided to try the large side of my crocodile, and although it was a little tight and I had to work at it initially to get the post through, it was a much better fit, and so that was the punch that I decided to go with. They do loosen up a little with wear, and I thought it was better to be a little on the tight side rather than loose to start with. I didn't want them flopping about. I've started to make a note there of the different sizes of the journal, because you need to work out the cover size. And here I'm just making my little template, and I decided to put the hole on my template piece just a centimetre in from the side and bottom on that left hand bottom side of the template piece, and I'll just punch that out with the crocodile, and that will give me a template for each of my postcards, because the one thing you want to be as sure of, and just to save having to measure each postcard, having the little template, and this was an idea that came from the library book as well, was making a template so you don't have to measure each and every single postcard. You can just align it up, and looking through the little hole on the crocodile, work through your pile of postcards and punch out the holes. I thought this would be a great idea not just for postcards but for things like prompt cards or ACTs or anything you've got that's on a single sheet but want to group together and retain. This is probably the slowest part of this. Part of it was actually cleaning up the crocodile each time that I punched out a hole. So I just went through and did all of the postcards, and when they were done I needed to measure the size of the spine that I required, and this again was a tip from the book, how to measure a spine. I normally just guesstimate it with my ruler, but it suggested using a scrap piece of paper with a fold line in it, and then just putting it over the pieces that you need to bind or create a spine for, giving yourself a little slight bend there. You don't want to push down because you don't want to compress the pile too much. So just gently folded it, and that gives me a little guide for how wide I need to make the spine, and it was about 1.5 centimetres. It was quite a good tip, that, because sometimes it can be a bit hit and miss when you're using a ruler. You don't want it to be too wide. Now just working out the formula, which is the height of your largest postcard plus a small margin. I just left 1/2 centimetre overall, and the width of the postcard plus a small margin, again 1/2 centimetre, and multiply that by 4 plus your spine. And so that was my piece there. You saw the measurements. Here I'm just laying the large postcard on to make sure, and there's just a tiny margin all the way around. It's probably less than 1/16 of an inch. And then I drew from the postcard, drew around the circle, and then punched through what is going to be both the front and the inside front of the cover. I also needed it on the back, but I didn't do that at this point. I left the hole for the back later. I just wanted to be able to identify the orientation of my piece while I was working on colouring it. And here I'm just going through and rubbing out the bit of pencil scribbling that I did. And then I got in, and one of the things I learnt recently in a Lally Mill workshop that I did was the suggestion, I've seen it with other people too, was just to write something on your blank page, puts a bit of text down, and also get your mind into the process you're trying to undertake. So it helps you sort of focus and concentrate. So I did all that, just some jumbled words, and then I got out my Memento ink and started doing a bit of stamping. Again, just to fill in some of that black. I tried to focus on things like travel and postal type images. I pulled out a napkin this was from Almut Olsen that she sent me some time ago in a bit of Happy Mail, and so I used part of that napkin just to put a little bit of colour down onto the base of the cover. You can see there, I didn't really explain, you need 2 widths of your postcard, a spine in the middle, and then 2 widths, because the 2 outside pieces actually are going to be folded to the inside. So the 2 ends that you can see there in score lines are going to be the inside back, and at the right hand side the inside front cover. Here I'm just applying some blue tissue. I wanted to start getting, I tend to want to put too much colour on things, so I'm trying to limit myself to get more of a theme going, and so I use some plain blue tissue over the top of that colour. And I think I did a better job this time. I'm hopeless at collage, but the only way you can get better is to keep practicing, I know that. The glue I'm using is just watery PVA. I find that's a very useful mix to have for a whole range of things, but particularly for these napkins and tissue paper generally. And I've got a few little torn up bits from another project I did at the weekend, just some remnants of text pages with a very tiny font, and leaving it to dry. It wasn't quite dry at this stage, but it was dry enough. I just wanted to wipe on some gesso to blend the colours a little and to merge the contrast that's going on. I really do need to find myself some heavy gesso. This is far too watery for this type of purpose, but it did the trick. The longest part of making this was, apart from cleaning out the crocodile, was waiting for things to dry. Here I'm going over again with the PVA water mixture, and I'm applying just large sheets of blue. I wanted to really get that blue happening, and so I thought a bit of texture and a bit of colour. The tissue paper's the way to go. Just finishing that off and removing the excess, and again letting it dry. Now I'm putting on some texture paste after it dried, and I've trimmed up the edges. I've torn a piece of paper towel in sort of in half across the middle, and I've laid that underneath to give me an edge to put the texture paste to. And so I'm applying it to the back, what is going to be the back of the cover there. I didn't put any on the inside. I didn't want the added texture on the inside. And I also put some on the front of the cover. I didn't get it on the spine either. I didn't want that to be terribly textured. Sorry about the hair. I've moved my camera a little bit, and I'm now filming my head again as I wriggle things about. I decided to go with the transparent texture paste because I wanted to put some inks on, and I wanted the translucency that I've been working on with all the layers of tissue paper. I wanted that to continue. Again, leaving it to dry, and once it's dry I'm going in again with some more stamps over the top of the tissue paper, and this is a sort of a postage set from Papertree ink that I've had for ages. It has postmarks and little franking sections and bits and pieces. Now I've put a towel down, and with a very, very wonky little sprayer there, I'm adding a bit of tealy blues and greens, trying to get it to run a little. This is a Lindy's spray, and it's really past its use by date, but it's a lovely colour and it's got a bit of a sheen in it, so I wanted to use it. The rest of them are mostly homemade sprays. I'm just putting more of the blue at the top and more of the tealy greens at the bottom. Just to get that colour going. There it is, it's dried, and I'm going around the edges with a purple crayon and rubbing that into the edges and the folds, just to put a little bit more of that purpley colour on rather than black. And I was a little bit concerned about the spine. I wanted, well, this is on the outside, I'm just putting a stamp from my darkroom door, I think it was airmail stamp, on the spine on the inside, but I was also a little bit concerned, even though you don't see inside the spine of this little folder, I wanted to put a bit of reinforcement on it, and you'll see that in a moment after I finished the airmail stamp. It's a very useful set, that darkroom door stamp. It's lovely. I use it a lot, especially on the outside of parcels. There's a stamp in there that says this is art because I say so, which I like a lot. You can see that's practically the cover done, but here's where I'm going to just tear off a little strip of purple book paper, book cloth. I use this a lot to reinforce my spines on journals. Using it more and more now. I've found a local source where I can get it. Nice colours. Just marking where I want those, so I get it fairly well centred. I'm not fussed too much, you won't see it. And I use PVA glue, usually a good quality PVA glue, for anything to do with book cloth. Make sure it stays where it's going to be meant to be. Just smoothing that down and adhering it down into the spine area, giving it a bit of a braid to make sure it's well adhered, and then I'm using my Hellmann's craft glue to adhere the covers. Giving them a good braid down and making sure they're very well adhered and are definitely going to stay put. Just doing the other side and making sure that's nice and flat, trimming off the excess of the book cloth from the inside spine. And putting it under the Webster to flatten it. I actually covered the front with some Liquitex gloss medium, and now I'm going in to cut that second hole. So this is in the back cover. Already got the one in the front, so pushing the ledger post in to the back and starting from the bottom of the pile and the largest postcard, I'm adding my postcards to the little holder in some sort of sequence. They're not really organised, they're just going in. And you can choose the ledger post that's best suited. You want that to be about the same width as the spine, to be honest. You want it not to be too much of a gap. And there it is. It's done. You can see how nicely they swing out, and you can see each of the postcards, and you can turn them over and actually read the back. So this would be quite a neat idea for prompt cards too, I was thinking, or ACTs, or anything that you want to keep in a group and keep them contained. So there we go, there's my little postcard keeper, and thanks to the lady whose name I'll put below, who wrote the book that I saw these in. Here's a couple of photos of the front and of the back. Hope you enjoyed that. I'll see you real soon. Bye for now.